Imagine walking into a room where your own family looks at you like you're a stranger who crashed their party. Quinn Hadley, a veteran who'd faced war's chaos, felt that sting when she stepped into the sleek Manhattan office for her grandfather's will reading. 5 years of deployment, dodging bullets in Kabul, and she returns to her father's icy glare and her sister's smug smirk. The air was thick with lemon polish and old grudges, but nothing prepared Quinn for what came next. Her grandfather, Everett Hadley, left her $42 million, a sprawling estate in Hudson Valley, and control of Hadley Dynamics, a tech empire her father, Warren, had eyed for decades. Before Quinn could process, Warren snatched the check, flicked a lighter, and set it ablaze, the flames licking her name into ash. "You're nothing to us," he spat as her sister, Sloane, watched in silence. But Quinn didn't flinch. Her slight smile hid a secret, a spark of defiance that whispered she wasn't done yet. This isn't just a story of betrayal. It's about a woman who turned fire into fuel. If you've ever been counted out by those meant to love you, stick around. This one's for you. Hit that like button, drop a comment about your own family drama, and subscribe to catch every twist of Quinn's fight. The conference room at Sterling and Voss was a stage for power plays, with mahogany walls and a view of the city skyline that screamed wealth. Quinn, in her worn jacket, felt like an outsider among tailored suits and forced civility. Her father sat at the table's head, playing CO instead of grieving son. Sloane, legs crossed, radiated the confidence of someone who'd never lost a bet. The lawyer, Ms. Eleanor Voss, a fixture in the Hadley family since Quinn was a kid, began reading Everett's will with a voice steady as steel. To Sloane, a lakeside cabin and a vintage Gibson guitar. To Warren, a collection of rare Steinbeck novels and a $15,000 donation in his name to a dubious charity. Then the bombshell. "To my granddaughter, Quinn Hadley, my truest ally, I leave the entirety of my estate, financial holdings, properties, and voting control of Hadley Dynamics, effective immediately." The room froze. Sloane's smile cracked. Warren's face darkened, and before anyone could speak, he lunged for the check. $42 million, signed and dated, and lit it on fire. The paper curled, Everett's signature vanishing in smoke. Eleanor Voss leaned back, unfazed, as if she'd seen worse. Sloane gasped, but Quinn just watched, her calm a silent promise of retaliation. Warren's words cut deeper than the flames. "You walked away, Quinn. This is what you get." She didn't argue, didn't shout. Her smile was a weapon, honed in war zones where survival meant staying sharp. She'd promised Everett she'd show up, and that promise anchored her now. As Warren ranted about forged documents and Sloane demanded a second reading, Quinn's hand brushed the pocket of her coat. Inside was a letter Everett had given her weeks before his death, wrapped in a napkin at a greasy diner over cold coffee. "Don't open this unless they try to burn it," he'd said, his eyes sharp despite his frail frame. She hadn't opened it yet, but its weight was a lifeline. The room buzzed with accusations. Warren claiming Eleanor was biased, Sloane spinning tales of Quinn's instability. Quinn sat still, letting their chaos unfold, knowing they'd underestimated her. She'd learned in Kabul how to stay invisible until the moment to strike. As Warren flicked the ashes across the table, Quinn's fingers tightened on the letter. She wasn't leaving empty-handed. The fight was just beginning, and the next move was hers. Quinn Hadley walked out of that Manhattan office with her father's words still burning in her ears, but the letter in her pocket burned hotter. Everett Hadley, her grandfather, had always been her anchor, the one who saw her when the rest of the family turned away. Weeks before his death, over a chipped mug of coffee at a Hudson Valley diner, he'd slipped her a sealed envelope wrapped in a napkin, his hand steady despite the cancer eating him away. "Don't open this unless they try to burn it," he'd said, his voice low, like he was passing her a grenade with the pin half pulled. Quinn had laughed, thinking he was being dramatic. But as she stood in the courthouse parking lot, the ashes of a $42 million check still fresh in her mind, she knew Everett had seen this betrayal coming. That letter was her lifeline, and the moment she slid her thumbnail under the red wax seal, the real fight began. "If you're still with us, you know that feeling, when the people closest to you try to erase you, but you've got a secret they didn't see coming. Hit that like button if you're rooting for Quinn, and drop a comment if someone's ever underestimated you like this. Subscribe for the next twist. It's about to get wild. The envelope felt heavier than it should, as if Everett had packed his entire legacy into its folds. Quinn didn't open it in the parking lot. Too many eyes, too many chances for someone to notice. She drove to her cramped apartment off the highway, the kind of place where the walls were thin and the neighbors didn't ask questions. The city's hum faded as she locked the door, pulled the blinds, and sat at her wobbly kitchen table. The wax seal cracked with a satisfying snap, revealing a single folded sheet and a USB drive taped to the back. The paper was a trust transfer form, notarized and dated 3 weeks before Everett's death. It wasn't just a backup, it was the real deal. The $42 million check Warren had torched was a decoy, a flashy distraction. The true inheritance, Hadley Dynamics voting shares, a Hudson Valley estate, and liquid assets, had been quietly transferred to an account only Quinn could access. The last 4 digits of the account number were Everett's birthday, reversed. He'd known she'd catch it. The USB drive was unmarked, no label, just a sleek black rectangle that felt like a promise. Quinn plugged it into her old laptop, her heart thudding like it did before a mission briefing in Kabul. A single folder popped up, Legacy. Inside were bank records, legal authorizations, and a draft of a second will, all time-stamped before Everett's final days. One document stood out, a memo detailing Hadley Dynamics' board structure, with Quinn's name listed as controlling shareholder. Everett hadn't just left her money. He'd handed her the keys to an empire Warren and Sloane thought was theirs. But there was a catch. A handwritten note in Everett's sharp scrawl read, "They'll fight dirty. Watch for Phoebe." Phoebe Carver, Warren's second wife, Quinn's stepmother, was a shadow in the family, always present, never loud. Her name on those documents wasn't an accident. Quinn leaned back, the chair creaking under her weight. The room was silent except for the faint buzz of a dying fluorescent bulb. She could still see Warren's lighter flicking to life, the smug curl of Sloane's lip as the check burned. They thought they'd won, but they didn't know Everett had played chess while they were throwing tantrums. Quinn's fingers traced the note's edges. Phoebe's involvement was a wild card. Had she signed off on the fraud, or was she just another pawn? The question gnawed at her, but the USB's contents were a weapon, and Quinn knew how to wield one. She'd survived ambushes in war zones. She could handle a family that thought burning paper erased her existence. As she slid the USB back into its sleeve, her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "Check your accounts. Now." Her stomach dropped. The game wasn't just dirty, it was already moving. Quinn Hadley's world tilted when she opened her banking app. The screen glitched, then spit out a cold message. "Account not found." Her pulse quickened, the same way it did when a mission in Kabul went sideways. She tried another card, declined. Thursday. This wasn't a glitch. It was a surgical strike. Someone had erased her from the system, and the anonymous text buzzing on her phone, "Check your accounts. Now," felt like a taunt from the shadows. Quinn, a veteran who'd faced death in the dust of war, was now a ghost in her own life, legally declared dead by her own family. Her father, Warren, and sister, Sloane, hadn't just burned a check. They'd forged a death certificate to steal her $42 million inheritance and control of Hadley Dynamics. The betrayal cut deeper than any bullet, but Quinn's military instincts kicked in. She wasn't running, she was reloading. If you've ever been betrayed by those you trusted most, you know this rage. Hit that like button if you're with Quinn, and comment if you've ever had to fight to prove you exist. Subscribe because this fight's about to get darker. Quinn drove to the DMV, the letter from Everett still tucked in her coat, its weight a reminder of his trust. The clerk, a tired woman with glasses perched on her nose, scanned Quinn's ID and frowned. "Ma'am, you're flagged as deceased," she said, her voice flat like she was reading a grocery list. Quinn's jaw tightened. "I'm right here." The clerk tapped her screen, unmoved. "System says otherwise. You'll need to file a correction with vital records." Could take months. Quinn walked out, the words legally deceased echoing like a bad joke. Next stop, the bank. A customer service rep named Kyle, sounding like he'd rather be napping, confirmed the worst. Your account's inactive, Ms. Hadley. Marked deceased 2 weeks ago. Certified by the registrar's office. Quinn hung up before her voice could crack. Her hands shaking not from fear but from fury. Back at her apartment, she paced the creaking floorboards. The city's hum a distant drone. The USB drive from Everett's envelope sat on her table. A silent promise of answers. She plugged it in again, digging through the legacy folder. One file caught her eye. A scanned court order, time-stamped days after Everett's death, declaring Quinn Hadley legally dead due to uncontested family testimony. Warren's signature was scrawled at the bottom, alongside Sloane's and a third name. Phoebe Carver. Quinn's stepmother, always hovering like a ghost with perfect hair, had signed off on erasing her. The document listed a small estate law firm in Albany, tied to a property Everett had held in trust, one Quinn never knew existed. Her family hadn't just stolen her money. They'd buried her identity to do it. The betrayal was a blade, but Quinn had faced worse in war zones. She remembered nights in Kabul, staying invisible to survive, reading the terrain for threats. This was no different. Her family was the enemy now, and she'd learned long ago how to outlast them. She pulled out a photo from Everett, tucked in the envelope. The two of them at a Hudson Valley fair, her 7 years old, both wearing paper crowns he'd crafted from wrapping paper. On the back, in his steady hand. They can't erase what's real. Her resolve hardened. Across the street, she spotted a figure. Tall, wearing a gray scarf she'd last seen on Phoebe, 3 years ago at a funeral. The figure didn't move, just watched, then vanished into the dusk. Quinn's gut twisted. This wasn't just paperwork, it was war. She grabbed her keys, the USB, and a burner phone she kept for emergencies. The next move was hers, and she wasn't waiting for another ambush. Quinn Hadley's heart pounded like it did before a night patrol in Kabul, but this time the enemy wasn't hidden in the desert. It was her own family, and they'd buried her alive on paper. Clutching a brass key Everett had given her on her 18th birthday, she stood outside Langford Storage, a nondescript facility in a crumbling corner of Albany. The key's tag read Box 22, and his words echoed, "You'll need this someday." That day was now. After her family forged her death certificate to steal her $42 million inheritance and Hadley Dynamics, Quinn knew Everett had left her a way to fight back. The key was her map to the truth, but as she approached the steel door, a shadow moved in her peripheral vision. Someone watching, too far to identify, too close for comfort. Her military instincts screamed trap, but she'd faced worse odds. This box held answers, and she wasn't leaving without them. If you've ever held a secret that could change everything, you know Quinn's fire. Like this video if you're rooting for her. And comment if you've ever had to dig for the truth. Subscribe, the next clue's a game changer. The Langford Storage Building was a relic, its faded buzzer and blinking camera screaming neglect. A woman in her 50s, ponytail tight as her expression, met Quinn at the door. "Key?" she asked, no warmth, no name. Quinn handed it over, the brass cool against her palm. The woman checked a clipboard, nodded, and led her down a narrow hall where fluorescent lights buzzed like a warning. Past 6 steel doors, they stopped at one marked Vault C. The woman typed a code, opened it, and left without a word. Inside, rows of lockboxes lined concrete walls, cold and silent as a tomb. Quinn found box 22, slid the key in, and held her breath. The lock clicked open, revealing a black fireproof folder and a manila envelope with her name in Everett's sharp handwriting, underlined twice like a command. She sat on the floor, dust clinging to her jeans, and opened the folder. Inside was a certified cashier's check. $42 million, shimmering with security watermarks, untouchable by Warren's lighter. Taped to it, a red sticker read, "Non-negotiable copy burned." Everett had known they'd tried to erase her. The manila envelope held more. Printouts of emails, board meeting notes, and legal drafts from Hadley Dynamics, all dated within the last year. Warren's name appeared repeatedly, alongside Sloane's and Phoebe Carver's, tied to asset transfers and a shadow company in Delaware. One email, sent from Phoebe to an unknown recipient, mentioned clearing the path for succession. Quinn's blood ran cold. Phoebe wasn't just a bystander, she was a player. A final note in Everett's scrawl sat on top. Trust no one, especially her. No name, but Quinn knew he meant Phoebe, the stepmother who'd always lingered like a quiet threat. The documents painted a picture of calculated betrayal. Her family hadn't just forged her death. They'd orchestrated a takeover, siphoning shares while she was deceased. Quinn's fingers trembled as she pocketed the folder, her mind racing. Outside, the air felt sharper. The watcher gone, but their presence lingering like a ghost. She drove back to her apartment, the envelope heavy on the passenger seat. As she parked, her burner phone buzzed again. Another text from an unknown number. "They know you were there." Her grip tightened on the wheel. The vault had given her ammunition, but the war was closing in, and someone was watching her every move. Quinn Hadley sat alone in her dim apartment, the city's pulse a faint hum beyond her window. The black USB drive from Everett's vault lay on her table, its weight heavier than the brass key that led her to it. Her family, Warren, Sloane, and the ever-elusive Phoebe, had forged her death to steal her $42 million inheritance and Hadley Dynamics, but Everett had seen their betrayal coming. The USB, tucked in his secret envelope, held his final weapon. As Quinn plugged it into her laptop, her heart thudded like it did before a Cobble Dawn patrol, where one wrong step could end everything. A single file loaded. Everett before. Her grandfather's face filled the screen, tired but fierce. His voice a steady anchor in a storm her family had brewed. This was his last stand, and Quinn was his chosen soldier. If you've ever been trusted with a truth no one else believed, you feel this moment. Like this video if Quinn's fight hits home, and comment if someone's ever bet on you when the world didn't. Subscribe, because Everett's words are about to light a fuse. The video opened in Everett's Hudson Valley study, sunlight spilling over his shoulder, stacks of papers around him like a battlefield map. "If you're watching this, Quinn," he said, his voice calm but edged with steel, "they did what I feared, tried to bury you." He leaned forward, eyes locked on the camera as if he could see her across time. "I built Hadley Dynamics to outlast greed, to serve people, not wallets." Warren never understood that. Sloane followed his lead. "But you never asked for anything, yet you showed up when it mattered." Quinn's throat tightened, memories flashing. Everett teaching her to fish at 7, slipping her that brass key at 18, always seeing the soldier she'd become. He held up a document, a trust transfer form. "This is yours, control of the company, the estate, the future. They'll lie, forge, and burn to take it, but you're tougher than their tricks. You survived war. You'll survive them." His voice softened. "Phoebe's in deep, watch her. She's not loud, but she's dangerous." The screen went black, no goodbye, just silence. Quinn sat frozen, her grandfather's trust afire in her chest. He hadn't just left her money. He'd left her a mission, to protect his legacy from a family that saw it as a prize. The note from the vault echoed. Trust no one, especially her. Phoebe's shadow loomed larger now. Her name on those forged documents a quiet threat. Quinn's burner phone buzzed, snapping her back. Another anonymous text. "They're moving fast. Check the board filings." Her stomach twisted. She opened her laptop, digging into Hadley Dynamics public records. A new filing, dated yesterday, showed a transfer of 30% of her shares to a shell company tied to Warren. The signature was hers, forged, sloppy, but convincing enough to fool a rushed clerk. Quinn's military training kicked in. Assess, plan, strike. Everett's video was her grenade, but she needed more than proof. She needed a battlefield. She called Sylvia Kane, a lawyer who'd once sued the Pentagon and won, her voice sharp and ready. "I've got something," Quinn said, clutching the USB. "It's big." Sylvia didn't hesitate. "Bring it. Now." As Quinn grabbed her coat, the city's lights flickered outside, and she swore she saw that gray scarf again, slipping into the shadows. The war was on, and she was ready to fire back. Quinn Hadley stood in the courtroom, her boots polished to a gleam, her face a mask of calm forged in cobble's dust. Her family, Warren, Sloane, and the ghostly Phoebe, had tried to erase her, forging her death to steal a $42 million inheritance and Hadley Dynamics. But Everett's video, his voice steady as a general's, had armed her with truth. Now, with Sylvia Kane, a lawyer who toppled giants, and Miles Crow, a forensic analyst with eyes like a hawk, Quinn faced her family in a courtroom that felt like a battlefield. The judge, Rena Caldwell, was a no-nonsense force, her gaze sharp enough to cut through lies. Warren's smugness faltered as Sylvia laid out the evidence: forged signatures, a fake death certificate, and a trail of fraud leading straight to him. Quinn's heart pounded, but she stood tall, knowing this was the moment to reclaim her name. If you've ever faced down a bully who thought they'd won, you know this tension. Like this video if you're cheering for Quinn, and comment if you've fought for your truth. Subscribe. The verdict's coming, and it's explosive. The courtroom in Albany was stark, its wooden benches worn but unyielding, like the truth Quinn carried. Sylvia stood, her voice clear and relentless. We're here to contest the fraudulent suppression of Quinn Hadley's identity and the illegal transfer of her inheritance. She slid a binder across the table. Everett's documents, Miles' forensic analysis, and a sworn affidavit from Dr. Lila Fremont, a physician coerced by Warren to certify Quinn's death due to mental instability. Warren's lawyer, Benton Hayes, rose with a practiced sigh. His suit crisp but his confidence shaky. This is a family dispute, Your Honor, not a conspiracy. The will was executed legally. Judge Caldwell's eyes narrowed. Then explain the video. The lights dimmed and Everett's face filled the screen, his words a quiet thunder. They tried to bury her, but this is her legacy. The room went silent, the weight of his truth pressing down. Benton stammered. It's emotional, Your Honor, but lacks legal weight. Sylvia didn't blink. Then perhaps the forged signature on the share transfer, the falsified death certificate, and the wire fraud logs will clarify. She pointed to Miles' analysis, showing Quinn's true signature, a distinct loop in the H, versus the flat, scanned forgery lifted from her military discharge papers. Sloane shifted, her eyes darting to Warren, whose jaw clenched like he was chewing glass. Caldwell flipped through the binder, her silence deafening. This isn't a dispute, she said finally. It's an attempt to erase a person, a veteran no less. Her gaze pinned Warren. You didn't just manipulate this court. You betrayed your daughter. To Sloane. And you enabled it. Sloane's face crumpled, but no words came. Caldwell's gavel struck once, sharp as a gunshot. This court recognizes Quinn Hadley as the sole heir to Everett Hadley's estate and controller of Hadley Dynamics. All fraudulent transfers are frozen, pending criminal investigation. Warren stared ahead, his hands balled into fists. Sloane looked like she'd forgotten how to breathe. Sylvia leaned toward Quinn, whispering, "You just took the crown." Quinn didn't smile, she didn't need to. The victory wasn't in gloating. It was in standing unbroken while her family's lies collapsed. As they left the courtroom, reporters swarmed outside, cameras flashing. Quinn walked past, her boots steady on the stone steps, but her mind was already on the next move. A text from an unknown number lit up her burner phone. They're not done. The war wasn't over, but Quinn was ready for the next round, armed with truth and a legacy no one could burn. Quinn Hadley's victory in the courtroom was a grenade lobbed into her family's empire, but she wasn't done. Armed with Everett's video, a searing testament to her rightful claim over Hadley Dynamics and a $42 million inheritance, she took the fight public. Her father, Warren, and sister, Sloane, had forged her death to steal it all, but Quinn had a weapon they couldn't burn: the truth. She met Nash Wilder, a grizzled journalist with a knack for exposing corruption, in a diner off Route 9, the kind of place where the coffee's bitter and the secrets are fresh. Handing him the USB drive with Everett's final message, Quinn unleashed a storm. As Nash's fingers hovered over his recorder, a shadow passed the diner's window, Phoebe Carver's gray scarf, unmistakable, lingering like a warning. The stakes were climbing, and Quinn knew the world was about to see her family's lies unravel. If you've ever wanted to expose a wrong, you feel this moment. Like this video if Quinn's courage hits you, and comment if you've ever blown the whistle on a lie. Subscribe. This story's about to break wide open. The diner's neon buzzed as Nash loaded Everett's video, his eyes narrowing at the old man's steady voice. They tried to bury her, but this is her legacy. Quinn laid out everything. Forged death certificates, fake signatures, and Warren's scheme to siphon shares through a Delaware shell company. Nash didn't flinch, just scribbled notes like he was mapping a war. "You want this public or leverage?" he asked. "Public," Quinn said. "Let the truth hit harder than their lies." By midnight, Nash's article dropped online. Veteran declared dead in $42 million inheritance grab. The video went viral, shared across platforms, from veteran forums to corporate gossip threads. By morning, Hadley Dynamics stock dipped 5%, and social media erupted. Veterans called Warren a coward. Shareholders demanded audits. A Reddit thread titled "Hadley Family Fraud" hit 500,000 views, with ex-employees leaking stories of Warren's boardroom tyranny. Warren scrambled, scheduling a press conference outside Hadley Dynamics' glassy headquarters. Flanked by two nervous executives, he wore a navy suit and a fake smile, his American flag pin gleaming. "This is a family matter," he said, voice smooth as oil. "Quinn's struggled since her service. We've tried to support her." Then the mistake. The company needs stable leadership, not unverified claims. Nash clipped that line, posting it solo. It hit 3 million views by dusk, with comments tearing Warren apart. Veterans citing Quinn's service record, analysts questioning the company's ethics. Sloan stayed absent, likely knowing her silence was safer than Warren's lies. A former Hadley accountant sent Quinn an anonymous email, a PDF of asset logs showing Sloan's forged signature on a $10 million consulting invoice, funneled to Phoebe's name. The noose was tightening. Quinn's burner phone buzzed as she left the diner. "They're circling. Watch your back." She scanned the street, catching a glimpse of that gray scarf again, vanishing around a corner. Her family wasn't just losing, they were desperate. Sylvia Kane called, her voice sharp. "The board's frozen asset transfers. You cracked them, but they'll hit back." Quinn nodded, gripping the USB like a talisman. She'd learned in Kabul to strike when the enemy overplayed their hand, and Warren's press conference was a misstep. The public wasn't buying his spin, and the truth was spreading faster than his lies. As Quinn walked into the night, the city's pulse felt like her own, a steady beat, ready for the final blow. Nash's next article was already in motion, and with it, the world would see Everett's vision and Quinn's fight in unbreakable clarity. Quinn Hadley's fight wasn't over when the courtroom gavel fell, nor when Nash Wilder's articles set the internet ablaze, exposing her family's fraud. Warren and Sloan had tried to erase her, forging her death to steal a $42 million inheritance and Hadley Dynamics, but Everett's trust in her was a fire they couldn't extinguish. Now, standing in a dusty storefront in Hudson Valley, Quinn held the final piece of his legacy, a business plan sketched in his steady hand for a training center for women veterans. The betrayal that declared her dead had only forged her resolve. She wasn't rebuilding for revenge. She was building something her family could never touch, a foundation for those who, like her, had been counted out. As she traced Everett's notes, her burner phone buzzed with a final anonymous text. "They're out of moves." But Quinn wasn't looking back. She was laying bricks for a future that would outlast their lies. If you've ever turned pain into purpose, you know this feeling. Like this video if Quinn's strength inspires you, and comment if you've built something from ashes. Subscribe. This is where her story becomes a legacy. The storefront was a relic, its scuffed windows and creaking floors a blank canvas. Quinn had bought it quietly, using funds from Everett's trust, no fanfare, no press. The sign went up a week later. Hadley Foundation, Veterans Forward. No ribbon cutting, just Quinn and a contractor named Jace, a former Marine who'd served in Fallujah and now built homes for vets. Over burnt coffee, they signed the lease on a folding table, dust swirling in the morning light. "What's the plan?" Jace asked, his voice rough but kind. "A place for women like me," Quinn said. "Somewhere to land, rebuild, fight back." The Foundation's first project was a legal fund for female veterans facing discharge disputes or housing scams. The second, Operation True North, paired young women in ROTC with mentors who'd walked their path. Everett would have rolled his eyes at the name but nodded at the mission. Sylvia Kane joined the board pro bono, her sharp mind cutting through red tape like a blade. Nash Wilder offered to write a launch piece, but Quinn waved him off. "Let it grow quiet first," she said. "Let it be real." Miles Crow set up the data security, ensuring no one could hack what she was building. The money wasn't an issue. Everett's trust gave her control, and she used it to fund desks, counselors, and a hotline that answered on the first ring. One evening, a letter arrived at an old P.O. box. No return address. Inside was a photo. Quinn, age 7, with Everett on a porch, both in paper crowns. On the back, his handwriting, "Build what they can't break." She pinned it to a corkboard, no frame, just raw. Weeks later, Quinn passed Sloan on a Hudson Valley street. Sloan froze, eyes wide, but said nothing. Quinn kept walking, no hate, no words, just forward. That same day, a veteran named Mara emailed the Foundation, discharged for reporting harassment, asking not for money but for someone to listen. Quinn called her, and they talked for hours, mapping a path from survival to strength. Mara became Client 01, the first of many. The Foundation grew, not loud but steady, a beacon for those who'd been erased. Quinn stood in the storefront one night, the heater humming, the street quiet. She wasn't a daughter or a soldier anymore, just a woman building what her family couldn't burn. The deed in her hand felt heavier than gold, a promise kept to Everett and to herself. Quinn Hadley stood at the Hadley Foundation's window, the Hudson Valley night stretching quiet and clear. The storefront, once a forgotten husk, now hummed with life. Desks where women veterans planned futures, walls pinned with stories of survival. Everett's legacy wasn't just the $42 million or Hadley dynamics. It was this place, built from the ashes of betrayal. Quinn didn't need to shout her victory. The Foundation spoke for her, a testament to those who'd been silenced but never broken. She thought of Mara, Client 01, whose voice found strength through a late-night call, and of Everett, whose paper crown still crowned her courage. The pain of her family's lies, Warren's fire, Sloane's silence, Phoebe's shadow, hadn't faded, but it fueled something stronger. Quinn tucked the deed into a drawer, next to that old photo, and locked the door. The stars outside were sharp, the air cold but clean. She wasn't reclaiming the past. She was shaping a future where no one could rewrite her name. This wasn't an ending. It was a beginning, steady as her boots on the pavement, carrying her forward. If Quinn's story hit you, hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear about turning pain into power. Drop a comment. Have you ever rebuilt after a betrayal? Subscribe for more stories of quiet justice and unbreakable spirits. Let's keep building together.